There isn't, I'm afraid, a great deal to talk about. I'll try. There's a square window full of flat white sky. A calendar still folded to August, although today is October the 22nd. By my bed, my things, some books, a glass of water, pill bottles, a sheaf of as yet unlooked at submissions in brown envelopes. My bed sores look like war wounds or split blood oranges. There are medical things here and there, dossiers, a wheelchair, a rack of linen and bandages, the drip plugged into my inner arm. There's me, Albert Chelyarpin, 59, radiating energy into the ether and asking nothing in return, poring over my sores, looking 75, and enduring the betrayals of my body. I came in here with a troublesome liver. They opened me up like a jacket potato, hustled away a kidney, made off with a bowel segment, and watched my treacherous blood escape and pool on the flecked hospital tiles. My body is a fifth column, and in the end it's going to win. Still I have the liver. It's like a scarred, shell-shocked old Major General who hangs on. Doesn't see that it would be best all round if he only let go. Morning, Mr. Chaplain. Chelyarpin. Chaliapin. Yes. How are you feeling this morning? The nurse, Paula, without much ado, pulls back my bedclothes and starts swabbing down my private zones. Tremendously proud. That's good. Paula rolls me over and sees to my war wounds. They sting. Lots of work to do? Some. Not too much. I gesture at the envelopes by the bed. That's good. She heaves me back into a sitting position and replaces my covers. Thank you, I say. My pleasure, she says. She isn't what you'd call pretty. She is a little bit ugly and a little bit pretty. Goodbye. Bye, Mr. Chaplain. Chelyarpin, C-H-A-L. But Paula has closed the door behind her. That's my most meaningful human contact of the day. Sometimes an Irish nurse with a buttered-up hand comes and has to tug an especially stubborn turd out of my ass, but we aren't on friendly terms. I'd rather have Paula do it, but I can never bring myself to ask. I turn my attention to the piled envelopes. It's 8:45. Take the top one, tear it open, pull out 4 white cartridge pages. What does Albert Chelyarpin do? A clapped-out old ruin. What's my line? These days I work for a satirical paper you probably haven't heard of. Harry Stoop founded the paper in 1966, and he still edits it from an inky cubbyhole somewhere in central London. Mostly he recruits sharp-toothed young things from among lowly Whitehallers, TV company runners, aimless arts graduates, square mile wannabes, but because I was at school with the old bumhole, he employs me as a cartoon editor. It's work that requires an eye for a good line, for good command of the nib and brush, an ability to discern whether the pen hand is doing what the brain wishes the pen hand to do. It requires, too, a sense of humour, of what's funny now, right now, and of what will always be funny. Some things will always be funny. It's work for an artist, of sorts. It's work you can do while sitting in bed. That's the important thing. I haven't always sat in bed, of course. I've done things. Great things? Good enough, I'd say. But in 1998, I came in here. Stoop got in touch after a week or two. He needed a cartoon editor. He needed someone to sit on their ass all day, he said, leafing through doodles. I had some experience. I was an arty shit, Stoop said. It started to rain outside. I'm tired. But you don't do anything, you say. I damn well do. I bleed, I ache, I ooze and seep. I wet myself, I endure side effects, after effects, withdrawal symptoms, addiction symptoms. I lie wide-eyed at night. I grumble and puke, remember and forget. I die. That's what I do. Slowly, but I die. And these things, each of them on its own and all of them at once, they're very tiring. I lie aside the 4 cartoons on cartridge paper and take a sip of the stale water. I was trying to think about this because I thought this would probably come up. I was trying to think about how, because Chelyarpin was a cartoonist, and one of the main characters, Smyth, Thomas Smyth, is a successful cartoonist on maybe Martin Rosen or someone along those lines. And I was trying to think, what the significance is, apart from the fact that it's something I know a bit about, and obviously you want to write about what you know. I didn't come up with an answer. I honestly don't know, because obviously what happens in the novel, without giving much away, is that...
I'll give a bit though.
Yeah, no, it gets Chelyarpin, who's sent cartoons to decide whether to publish them in Stoop's magazine, which is kind of a private eye type concern. He gets been sent these very strange little cartoons about a man called Citizen Wilson, who and his very enigmatic cartoons and slightly unsettling, and they get slightly more unsettling as things proceed. And they make Charlie Arpin very uneasy and very alienated and very uncertain about what's going on and what, about reality, about everything. But it's really hard to say. There's certainly no sort of easy answers. It's certainly no sort of straightforward symbolism, because I find that quite tedious, that sort of point-to-point correspondence, where this stands for this stands for this. I can't get along with that kind of thing, generally. It's a sense of another reality, I suppose, another layer.
Is it in part a sensibility for sort of distortion?
Well, exactly. I mean, he talks about, you mentioned grotesques earlier, and I suppose Charlie Arpin is a grotesque, although I'm a bit too close to him to see that. But a lot of the other characters are grotesques, and Smyth is one of those cartoonists who I'm not particularly a fan of, who create horrific, and Martin Rowson in The Guardian is one of those as well. He's a brilliant cartoonist, but in terms of aesthetic, Ralph Steadman obviously, who create these incredibly ugly caricatures of people, which are really dramatic and impressive, and I call that kind of grotesquing. And aesthetically, I'm not a huge fan of that kind of thing. I prefer the older school stuff. But there is a sense, and there's a certain point, Charlie Arpin, when he's feeling particularly alienated and smacked out on his meds and stuff, starts seeing the world in terms of gargoyles. So it's just another layer of reality, I suppose. Yeah.
Because one thing I do enjoy is that it is voice. But the problem for me with first person is a lot of the time it can just become monologue, and you don't have that visual element. I like to see the literature, which is again what SJ was talking about before. But you managed to make the voice pictorial and sort of distorted. Yeah,
well, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot. I know what you mean about monologue, but I find it difficult to stay in the same place in terms of, particularly in terms of time. I'm a sucker for flashbacks and flash forwards and moving around in that way, and I often use, in other stuff, I'll use multiple voices or follow multiple characters. So I suppose I'm naturally quite twitchy. I have quite a short attention span in terms of writing, in that I will get bored of the sound of my own voice and I'll hop around a little bit.
But it's very high energy. How do you keep up that level of stamina for a whole novel of just kind of
I don't know.
frantic and energetic?
I don't know, it's just the way, well, it goes back to reopen
it. When you're writing it, but you're so kind of...
It's just that, I'm a very bad reviser of my own work. I tend to write, my first draft tends to be the finished draft. As far as I'm concerned, my editors sometimes have other ideas. But, so each sentence is, I put all the effort into it. I wish I could be one of those people who can just throw out 80,000, 100,000 words and sculpt that, find the sculpture within the marble, so to speak. But I can't. But to reopen my bitter running feud with S.J. Bradley, which will be the talk of the literary establishment after today. Going back to what you were saying earlier about making each word count for a lot. I totally agree with that. That's exactly what I want to do. But if you understand how much can be done with a word or two words or a phrase, make more of them. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me to say, well, this word has such an amazing effect, I'll write a book that's got hardly any of them in. If you can do a lot with a small amount of words, imagine what you can do with loads of words. And that tends to be my attitude. Yeah, it's a funny one. I think, because I know London a lot better now than I did when I wrote this, actually, but I knew it as a visitor. And I've always felt quite... I'm not one of these northerners who feels alienated from London. I've always felt, the rest of the south, yes, that's a different place, but London, there's a direct line to it from Wakefield, where I'm from. And it's just, it's my capital as much as anyone else. So I've never had that chippy, anti-London northerner feeling. And I think what it is with Charlie Arpin is that he goes back, for a start, he goes back into central London with Paula, his nurse, who is, well, she is a northerner, it's not really got on much, but she is, and she's new to London, so she visits it with that sort of excitement. And also, Charlie Arpin hasn't been there, in years, because he's been in hospital. So his return to London is about, he's got that visitor's excitement, and it's hitting him with the full force that it hits someone who's not used to it. So it's certainly not a novel about someone who's ground down by London, or, who does the 95 commute.
Between the hospital and then when he's out, it's just
exactly,
delays of...
That's the idea. I mean, this is why it's not a real hospital, and like I say, neither is it symbolic, because then you get that tedious, what does this represent? But the contrast is supposed to be between basically non-existence and existence, and London is existence with all that entails, good and bad. Charlie Appin has left the hospital. He's at the home of Smyth, who's an old friend from the 60s, 70s when he was when Charlie Appin was active. This is the cartoonist I was mentioning, the Grotesca. So he's staying at Smyth's house, but in this section he's reminiscing about his father, Collier, who was Russian, and he's now dead. And Charlie Appin's mother, Collier's wife, died long before. So yeah, this is Charlie Appin sitting in Smyth's house, reminiscing about his father. And Collier is Russian, but I'm not going to essay a Russian accent. So when Collier's speaking, imagine it in a Russian accent. There is snow in my soul, Papa Collier said. Oh, Pa, come on. You're young and don't know. Remember, Albert, that you never knew your mother. I do remember that. I was 29 years old. I did remember. Collier had to himself the Russian language and the memory of Moscow, and also the knowledge of my mother, Anna. And I felt these absences like holes in my shoes, always. Papa Collier, old now and bent like an old pin, walked to the window with his hands clasped behind his back and looked out into the garden. I awake in the mornings and feel like frost. I feel frozen. And I don my black clothes, Albert, but still I am a man of snow. When it is warm in the room even, and there are guests and laughing, I am snow. Pa, really, listen. I play the old music, and I think of Anna, and I will melt, he said. It's not quite right, Pa, to think like this after so long. I don't mean that you ought to forget, not at all. Yes, remember, but for God's sake, can't you be happy in remembering? You don't know, he said. What don't I know? You don't know. I joined him at the window, and leaning on the sill, looked at his face. Sad as Sunday. Outside there wasn't snow or frost, but on the contrary, a weighty heat, turgid with rain. On Sundays in August, even if the rain doesn't fall, you intuit that it should, and the next morning you wake and think, what storms we had yesterday? She liked to eat plums and apples and to play chess. I know, I said. Anna, she could fly light aeroplanes. I know, I said. You've told me. She liked to read Jane Austen and John Milton, and the pictures by Turner, and green vegetables from a can, and spotted dresses, and cats more than dogs, but horses still more, and trumpet music, and bicycles, wagtails, wirelesses, poppies, he said. I know, I said. All these things you know, Papa Collier said bitterly, and yet you don't know. Also, she liked Collier Charlie Appin. Collier Charlie Appin, he said. He stared out of the window. Listen to young Albert there, and what with all his chat about forgetting, remembering, happiness, you'd think he was quite an expert, quite an authority. Now, maybe. But at 29? Was I rather an arsehole when I was 29? As Collier stared out at the sky, he said, sneg, 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 and it sounded absurd. Your Turgenev makes you feel this way, I told him. Turgenev to blame? Yes, why not, Albert? All those sad steps, introspection and ploughed fields, all those cold men feeling thoughtful and, what is it they always are, superfluous. Papa Collier, without moving his head, fixed his pungent eyes on me and his white fingers drummed. He disliked it when I was stupid. If this is the way it works, then your James Joyce will make a maniac of you, he said. I laughed, and Collier smiled. Did Joyce make a maniac of me? I was well read, but perhaps that only made me stupid. Probably those fellows Joyce and Hardy and Gogol kept me from greater stupidities. Explain it to me, I said. I think and think, but it's no good. Please, Pa, try and explain. You know, I do want to understand all this. I can't think, Albert. This damn snow, it blocks my eyes, ears, mouth. My tongue is frozen. My hands, he clapped them sharply. I cannot feel. For fuck's sake, I said. Papa Collier shook his head with preposterous slowness and went, tut, tut. You can't miss her this much, I persisted, irritated. You can't. I'm sorry, Pa, but I don't believe it's my mother you miss. 30 years ago, Pa, for Christ's sake, this wearing black, this cello playing, this snow in your soul, it's a habit, a bad habit, and that's all. Collier would not be spoken to like this. He folded his hands together. "So," he said, "you don't like my cello playing?" But don't remember him like that, Chaliardi. Remember how warm the cello case was, and how well he drew fairies, and how much he loved Anna, your mother. Can't you remember these things, Albert, instead? I'm sorry, but in the deeps of this brain of mine, I have no authority. And this may have been the same day, or it may have been one day previously. For 5 days I've watched, and I don't know what's happening, Collier said, with hunched shoulders. It's simple, I told him. It's elementary. For you, my clever boy, it's elementary, and yet for me it's double Dutch, you see? Now, this business of following up, following on. Ah, he shouted, grinning, wringing his hands. It isn't Russian, it isn't English, what is it, what is it? He hopped up and down on the spot. Now, if we imagine that Hutton has hooked a Chinaman's deep fine leg, I said, in clipped terms, and had Papa Collier hooting in exasperation. It is not a game, it is not a sport, it is a branch of mathematics, it is a figment of your imagination. I refute it, it is all just a bad dream. It's England's glory, Papa. 5 days I watch nothing, nothing. 5 days I will not see again in a hurry. Ah, you Russians, you simply have no soul, Pa, no soul at all. With an immense, faintly yellow grin splitting his neat face, Papa Collier reached for a red apple that sat in the fruit bowl. He turned it around in his hand, tossed it up, and caught it with a plop, and then flung it mightily at my head. It smacked into my left temple. I took 2 stunned and foolish steps backwards, tripped over a wicker chair, and fell out of the open window. How's that? How's that? Oh, Jesus. I wonder if Smith, upstairs, can hear me laughing.